Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tetsuya Nakata from Peninsula University of Illinois. Right now, I'm affiliated with Peninsula University as an exchange professor and teaching Japanese political and foreign policy for undergraduate students. And today, we are going to discuss about North Korea under the new regime. And I'm pretty sure everybody here is interested in what's going on in North Korea, and also, what are the implications for other countries such as the United States, Japan, and China, as well as South Korea. So today we have two experts from the United States and also South Korea. These two experts are going to discuss about present situation in North Korea and the future prospect of international relations in Northeast Asia. And after these two presentations, Professor Chow of American University is going to make some comments. And after that, I'm pretty sure everybody wants to ask questions and comments. So just go to lower, then have Q&A sessions as much as we can. So maybe we should start. Each presenter is going to make a presentation for about 10 to 15 minutes. So we can save more time for discussion. Okay, maybe time is in your hand. Stop. Naida-san, you can start. Okay, stay here while you can make a presentation here.
It looks like I should go up there to use the mic too. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and participate in USJI Week and to talk about changes in North Korea under Kim Jong-un. I feel a little bit awkward to go before my South Korean colleague, but I'll try to get us started off. And what I want to do is to talk a little bit about what I think we see happening in North Korea since December of last year, as we moved from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un. And then I want to talk about two main areas of policy emphasis that I see developing in the new leadership. And then I'm going to identify some challenges that those two policy areas pose for the international community. And so let me just start by expressing necessary humility, because the North Korean system, as you all know, is very opaque. And we are watching developments through a lens, and do not necessarily in the United States have the benefit of seeing or having direct interaction with many North Koreans. And the ones who I can meet don't want to talk to me about leadership issues. And so, the system is opaque, power is personalized, institutional roles can be difficult to discern. In fact, among specialists, there is an ongoing debate even over the question of whether Kim Jong-un is really in charge, or whether there is a collective leadership. So there are many things that we don't know. What I think that we do know is that back in September of 2010, at the North Korean Workers' Party conference, Kim Jong-il set up what I like to think of as his last will and testament in terms of thinking about how the leadership process might go forward. And I think it was a system that was designed to strengthen the party and provide checks and balances among the major figures who were power holders around Kim Jong-un. And we know that at that time, one of the people who was very prominent in that process was the General Lee Young-ho, who was appointed and seems to be almost like the guardian for the succession. And then we saw when Kim Jong-il died that a number of the other prominent person who was getting a lot of attention in external circles was Chung Song-tak, Kim Jong-un's uncle, and Kim Jong-un's brother-in-law, the husband of his sister Kim Jong-un. And so I saw September of 2010 as really, in some respects, an effort to create a check and balance system in which there was someone to counter, that Lee Young-ho countered Chung Song-tak and vice versa. So over the course of the past few months, I think one of the things that we have seen as Kim Jong-un has accumulated titles and as he has accumulated power, we have also seen some changes in the faces surrounding him, especially on the military side. And so one of the significant developments was the promotional rehabilitation of Che Yong-hae, an ally of Chung Song-tak from the 80s and 90s, as a vice marshal and as the head of the General Political Department, which is a very important position. And so he had been set up in some ways, it wasn't clear at the time, but in a way that was an odd appointment because it occupied some of the space that Lee Young-ho, I think, was filling. And of course in July we saw Lee Young-ho's dismissal. And so in some respects it looks like Chung Song-tak and Che Yong-hae could be guiding forces behind Kim Jong-un. Now we also see Kim Jong-un, and I think we're still trying to evaluate Kim Jong-un as a leader. He's been much more dynamic than his father. This succession has happened much more quickly in terms of activity than Kim Jong-il's succession from Kim Il-sung. We've seen media portrayals of him as a man of action. His rhetoric has suggested a certain boldness, perhaps even some over-assurance. We've all seen coverage of Kim Jong-un and his new wife watching new kinds of entertainment in North Korea, suggesting that there could be a very different direction that Kim Jong-un might go in. But it's still very difficult to say exactly what is going to happen, because I think that the situation hasn't played out. I mean, even today, it was announced that there is going to be a Supreme People's Assembly session on September 25th. Usually that session occurs only in the spring. And so I think we're right in the middle of a process that has been defined, I think, so far by a kind of consolidation of power for Kim Jong-un, with Chung Song-tak playing a major role. What we don't know yet is whether this situation will be sustainable or whether there might be some kind of blowback. We also don't know, I think, whether there might be more generational changes to come in the North Korean system. And I think it's not yet clear whether there might be some hidden stresses on the existing patronage system that could lead to division or challenges within the North Korean leadership. Now, what has Kim Jong-un and what have the North Korean leadership emphasized so far? I think there are two major themes that we can see emerging over the course of the past 3 or 4 months. One is that they're trying to fix some of their economic problems. Two, I think that the North Koreans have indicated that they place a priority on retaining and possibly continuing to build their nuclear capabilities. And so these two priorities, I think, together with each other, pose some interesting challenges, policy challenges for the United States and for South Korea, for China, for North Korea's neighbors. So, so far, what have we seen on the economic side? Well, Kim Jong-un's speech in mid-April talked about not wanting to have North Koreans tighten their belts. We have seen tours by North Korea's president to Indonesia and Singapore in April and to Vietnam in August, which had a theme of trying to reach out and make new investment ties. There's the introduction of what has been called a new economic management system in North Korea. We're still trying to figure out exactly what that is, but the reports have suggested a devolution of central planning guidance to enterprises, a devolution of handling of profits, to farmers and to companies at various levels. It seems that the central planning guidance mechanism is being pared back. There's a report that some of the military roles in the economy are going to be switched over to the cabinet. And of course, we know that Jong Un went just last month to China and showed interest in 2 economic zones that are on the China-North Korea border. And then, of course, we'll have to wait and see what the Supreme People's Assembly meeting on September 25th is about. So, there's a lot of evidence that at least Kim Jong-un recognizes that he's got economic problems that have to be dealt with. And I think that's a good thing. What we don't know is what the form of advice or shape of the program is going to be yet completely. We don't know whether there's going to be blowback. A lot of people say that if North Korea begins to reform, that will introduce political instability. So there are a lot of questions about how that's going to play out. And then I think another one is that we don't yet know whether North Korea is reforming or whether they're just fundraising. And I think those are 2 different things. Now, what about North Korea's nuclear program? Well, North Korea has recognized that its nuclear deterrent was a major contribution to the legacy of Kim Jong-il. They've included references to North Korea as a nuclear state in their constitution. They have regularly repeated the goal of strengthening their nuclear deterrent over the course of the past few months. They have, in unofficial media, stated that their decision not to conduct missile and nuclear tests over the course of the summer is not an expression of weakness. And just last week, they issued a very interesting, lengthy foreign ministry statement, which essentially makes the argument that the U.S. is the one that needs to make the choice, either to establish a normal relationship with North Korea or to maintain the U.S. quote-unquote hostile policy toward the North. And that if the U.S. decides to maintain its hostile policy, then North Korea will modernize and expand its nuclear deterrent, quote-unquote, beyond the U.S. imagination. So I think the challenge for the international community is going to be how to reconcile this. On the one hand, we want to encourage economic reforms in North Korea. On the other hand, the nuclear issue remains one that is very much an issue of concern, especially in the United States. How do we promote economic changes while containing and trying to reverse North Korea's nuclear program? And I think this is going to become very complicated, especially as we see North Korea reach out economically to China. Will China have some bar for what it will do, that conditions assistance on denuclearization? Well, it's complicated to know what China's position is on that. It's hard. It's clearly they prioritize stability over denuclearization in North Korea. So a lot of it may depend on how China sees stability in North Korea. We also know there's an election in December, presidential election in South Korea. I think that both candidates for president, or at least the conservative candidate who's already been named, intends to reach out, try to stabilize the inter-Korean relationship. We don't know where denuclearization is going to stand as a priority in South Korean policy toward the North. And so the issue that I'm concerned about at this stage, and of course North Korea has also reached out to Japan, we all know, and established some kind of working level dialogue, or at least they had a round of discussion. So North Korea is trying to reach out, they're becoming more active. If they really pursue the economic agenda, will the nuclear agenda get lost in the shuffle? And what does that mean, I think, for U.S. policy as it tries to grapple with the importance of denuclearization, while other countries may be focusing more on economic reform? And I think another related question, and I'm going to end on this, is I think it's an interesting question, how far North Korea can go down the road of economic change without dealing with its relationship with the United States. There are a lot of sanctions in place, including on possible assistance from the World Bank or international financial institutions that would prevent those institutions from getting involved with North Korean changes or reforms. And so there clearly is a limit, but at the same time, there are actually a lot of ways in which I think the North Korean system, as it currently stands, could take measures that would improve productivity, possibly strengthen North Korea's economy to a certain degree, with help from China, possibly with help from South Korea. We just don't know how far North Korea would be able to go on that particular road without running into obstacles that would essentially require it to come back and deal with the nuclear issue. So I'll just put that out there as another question that I think is interesting. I've tried to step back and do more of a broad brush picture, really anticipating that my South Korean colleagues would get into maybe more of the details. But let me stop there and look forward to the Q&A.
Nice to meet you. I'm very honored to present my views about the North Korea situation. I'm very happy because everyone is come here to a very impressive time. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un simply began his institutional position in the party and cabinet and the military. As the Supreme Commander and the First Secretary, First Chairman, and the Marshals. But does it complete? And then we need some evaluate of the North Korea's political system because of the first we judge the stability of the Kim Jong-un's reason. We just call the North Korea political system the Syrian system. As you see that North Korea's system is vertical and horizontal axis. This is the leader system, the Syrian party and state is the oppressive system. This is the hierarchy. And then as the horizontal axis is we just call the combination system, Syrian party and people. This is the arbitrary as a supportive system. As a North Korea's political system, as we focus on the combination system, because how can build up the combination as the Syrian and the people? And those kind of people believes that there are two kinds of the right. One is the natural as the came from the parents, as another is the political and social right. If they wanted to live forever through this political social right, they have to connect with the Syrian as ideologically. This is North Korea's combination system. Therefore, ideology is very important. As in case of the Kim Jong-il, is make his unitary system, combination system with the Juche ideas, self-reliance. And that's Kim Jong has not yet suggested, not yet. And we just the second is perspective of the unitary leadership system, and as how can be the leadership system, and hierarchy and operational system. This is the North Korea's succession period. As in the joint Russian period, this is the North Korea's successor as the most completest is the unitary system as long as leading. And then is the, in case of the Kim Jong-il, is the starting point is 1974, as finishing point is, end point is 1994, as just 20 years. As so long time as he can make his unitary system. And in case of the Kim Jong-un, as starting as 2009, and the finish is 2011. As just the last 3 years. It's very short time as how can his unitary system? And he says, what is the unitary system? Is we just call it as soon as basically organization system is very important. In case of what is there three kinds of elements. And one is its position, and second is hierarchy changing, and third is new principle regulation. In case of the Kim Jong-il, his position is the organization guidance department is very important department in North Korea. He takes his position as a position, and then he changed his hierarchies as a young people, from the young people, and so as he made his 10-point discipline to the unitary system, and then he can concentrate on him and personnel right, as reporting right, as inspection right. But as Kim Jong-un is very short period, he cannot make his organization system, even though he is take his institutional position as a top leaders. Therefore, as with the two considerations, we just as Kim Jong-un has not yet as his unitary system, and that is as important the core motivation for the change of North Korea is the role of the hierarchy is very important. This is the Kim Jong-il's design for the new hierarchy structure. At the third Workers' Party representative meeting, September 20th, 2010, he divided the three kinds of the hierarchy group from this unitary hierarchy group. As one is the politics of the Workers' Parties, there is very symbolic figures of the over the age of 80s, and that is not important because he divided the two persons. One is the Jang Sung-taek as a Resident Security Council. Most of them is from the party and the internal security group. And this second is the Lee Hong-ho is the lead of the new military groups. Most of them is the general staffs of the military, and he gathers in the Central Military Commission. As they divided, North Korean leader Kim Jong-il is before he died, he designed for his young son. As first is he induced the loyalty competition, because he has not yet consolidated his unitary system, and then he is very easily to grasp the initiative of the powers as a competing system is very, very useful. And then this is the system is designed from Kim Jong-il. How can I would like to testify the competing as with Lee Hong as Jang Sung-taek as resident security, and Lee Hong-ho is new military system, new military heritage. This is the provocation in the conversation. since January 8, 2009. This is the nomination date of the successors of Kim Jong Un. At 2009 April and May as the provocation, as launches the long-range rockets and carried out second nuclear test. And they turned into is the overstand step is the conversation, as inviting the former U.S. President Bill Clinton to Pyongyang and to negotiate with the release of the detained of two journalists. As the visiting gives the secretaries, Kim Jong-il secretaries in Seoul, as to propose of the summit talks. And then they turned this November is provocation is North Korea's is attempt provocative action and the northern limits line. And then is the thinking of the South Korean worship tonight as maybe North Korea's torpedo attacks. And 2010 as the May and August is the conversation again. Kim Jong-il visits China and explain about the ceasefire talks, resumption of ceasefire talks. And September, the two Koreas agreed to the reunion of the separated family. And then they found it as provocation. And the sharing of the Yeonpyeong Island. And the conversation. As the proposed dialogue between two Koreas, as the Kim Jong-il visits China and Russia and proposed as the resumption of the ceasefire talks without precondition. As Kim Jong-il dies in December. And then, as the North and the U.S. is reached agreement to 2.29, as but as the day provocation again, as North Korea is launched the third time long-range rocket. How can you explain the North Korea's action? And because of it's very regular, repeated very regularly, provocation and this conversation, provocation, conversation, provocation, conversation. How can you explain that? This is Korea is two RT groups is competing is supporting the someone is supporting the provocation, someone is supporting the as conversation. How can I'd like to just the law of this Jang Sung-taek and Lee Hong-ho as Jang Sung-taek is supporting of the conversation because he is a priority on the stability. As because he is finished the Kangsong-daegu as until 2012, and then he overcome the diplomatic isolation. Can you imagine that North Korea with Kim Jong-il is just 1 year and 3 times visits China and 1 times Russia, just 1 year, and then he is to make a friendly environment to with the neighboring country, but in the mid as the North Korean military group is provocation, happened the provocation of the sharing of the Yeonpyeong Island. And then is Jang Sung-taek is attract investment from the outside, the people. But as the Lee Yong-ho, as a new military groups is priority and the speed transfer of the sub-generation succession, because they want to fortify the Sunggun as a military first policy continuously. And then they prepare to the external tension, especially as a military tension. It's very useful to as the sharing of the initiative of the powers in the, among the elite groups. This triangle is the design of the Kim Jong-il. As he designed of this triangle, 2 groups, new military groups and the resident security groups supporting the younger leaders, Kim Jong-un, simultaneously, but there's between the Lee Yong-ho and the Jang Sung-taek, the role is different. One is that, can you see that the picture? This is the 2010 is the third Workers' Party conference, and the Lee Yong-ho is sitting between the two Kims. This man is the protector of the two new wrestlers from the Kim Jong-il. And then, but the Jang Sung-taek is a patron, because he's relative of the Kim Jong-un. Is because of the this year's April's conferences, April conference convention, as North Korea's appointed the Choi Ryong-hae is close collaborators of Jang Sung-taek. His director of the General Political Bureaus. This as department is the control over the military, and then is named as the Kim Won-hong is the director of the State of Security, as the control over the society, as the Lee Myung-soo is the director of the People's Police, as also as under the Jang Sung-taek's influence. As the North, but this Lee Yong-ho was purged at this last July 15th, suddenly. And this means the collapse of the Kim Jong-il's design for his youngest person. This means the emergence of the ruling RT groups without competitors in the North Korea's RT groups. I would like to say the prospect of the change North Korea. We can summarize as a new competitive actor is emerging, as Kim Jong-un and Jang Sung-taek will be competitors. And then is that there are two ways of the North Korea's goal can go. And one is the gradual, and another is the radicals. How can evaluate of the two ways? One is the is your attention. I'd like to summarize my speaking. This is okay. New competitor is very important because of the because the forging of the Lee Yong-ho, as there are two competitor persons, as Jang Sung-taek is among the RT groups, and now after the forging of the Lee Yong-ho as the new competitors, as the top leader of this, as we just called the Suyeong, the North Korean leaders, and then is the his as Jang Sung-taek is can be to be or and competitors, and then is we can how can divide this? How can you evaluate of the North Korea's direction as a gradual and radical means depend on the economic resource between two leaders. I would like to use examples the April 6th discourse and
June 28 measures. As there are two kinds of the economic measures, and then one is the former is that is readjustment of the power economy from the military and the cabinet, and then is the second is the June 28 measures is the focus on the some kind of the expansion of the autonomous disposition. They can sell the amount of the production. That's a very different two kind. One is the strength of the special economic zone. It's very useful to LT group, especially region LT group from the Transitional. And the second is the stimulate of the market, because North Korea's people can harvest their harvest and they can sell in the market. As this importance of the divide is the action. In this course, and North Korean leaders Jang Sung-taek and Kim Jong-un can share this very well, and North Korea will be gradual. As the broken, as their profit is different, and there will be red Korea. That's very important. Therefore, I'd like to say implication as North Korea will be. I mentioned earlier is about the North Korea's inner part of political situation. As North Korea this is a transitional period, very important importance as the period, and I think this time is a very opportunity to get close to the North Korea, because of the North Korea everything needs some kind of money or some investment from the outside. For the time being, I think North Korea will be do not provocation action, and they will there is a friendly negotiation with the outside, and there is this opportunities that don't lose, and then we need some get close to North Korea and take out the North Korea into the international society. This is the small approach of North Korea or the piece of the Northeast Asia, and recently is the resumption of the North Korea and Japan is a very important signal to the escape of the North Korea diplomatic isolation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for two speakers for your detailed analysis with North Korea. So maybe from now, Professor Chow, would you like to make some comments or questions on these two presentations? Would you like to make a presentation here or go? This mic is not working.
Thank you. I would like to first congratulate USJI Institute for organizing such successful. Oh, I should use the voice. Can you hear me?
No. Yes.
Back room. Is okay? For organizing such a successful event, it's really timely and significant. What I would like to do, and I'm supposed to do, is to make some comments on the implication of the with Korea Peninsula and China, the intention and policy, and then I will ask questions to the two excellent presentations. I will try to finish the thing in a short period so that we can move on for more questions. Let me first talk about Korea Peninsula is always occupied a central position in Northeast Asia Peninsula. My current teaching at American University in East Asia seminar, one of the textbooks I'm using is entitled Korea at the Center. It's edited by Gil Rassman of Princeton University. That indicating that whatever the movement of Korea Peninsula always would have profound implications to surrounding powers, and China, of course, also included. And early during, we arrived early, fall speakers, we chat about what would be the next few months in addition to this first change of leadership from Kim Jong-il to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And we will see a number of changes of leadership for the following months. Like next month, we will see a new leadership in Beijing. And then in November, new leadership in White House here in Washington. And then December, new leadership in Seoul, South Korea. So again, North Korea taking a lead, right, to make changes. Of course, it's unintentionally. With those changes, if we look at China, I would say that China has three priorities to think about if we really talk about North Korea implications. The first one is China's own national security. That's always is a foremost priority for Chinese foreign policy. And secondly, it's how these changes would be conducive to China's its own foreign policy priorities. In this case, is modernization and responsibility. That is, China would fulfill its own as a great power. And thirdly, China would always put any changes into the context of major power relations. And in this case, if we look at other major powers involved with Korea Peninsula, that is the United States, Japan, and Russia, in addition to two Koreas. Having said that, let me just be more specific on policy issues. You know, how does Kim Jong-un regime? There are specifically, I would think China at least consider some, pay close attention to some very specific scenarios. The first scenario is regime stability in Pyongyang. This is a lot of questions. Whether this is young Kim capable to maintain a stable regime. Naturally, we have been arguing that in my own research as well, that it would be conducive to see relative gradual change rather than a regime collapse. We understand that this is one of the major differences between China and the United States. If we look at early policy from Washington, axis of evil and among others, that's all targeted on regime change of Pyongyang. However, China's policy, rather to see a gradual change in this way, is regime stability rather than collapse, not to mention that kind of consequences such as the refugee and other, and the disruption along the border area. The second scenario on the policy China paid close attention is whether there will be, as Scott also mentioned, economic reform. If you look at any North Korea leaders, when they travel to China, one of the favorable actions Chinese leaders would like to take is to bring the North Korean leaders to Shanghai and Shenzhen, the two reform-oriented or even special economic zones, is a showcase to demonstrate how this would likely to improve North Korea's condition, and this is another policy issue. And the third scenario, and the third point that China would like to really pay attention is to see the direction of six-party talks. Whether or how or when the six-party talks could be resumed. So that's another policy. I understand that there are many different evaluations, opinions, either inside or outside of China, that whether six-party talks is a positive one or negative one. But in whatever the case, so far there are no other alternatives yet. Washington would not want to see a purely bilateral, and definitely would like to bring China into the case, into the picture. So as long as there is no effective alternative scenario, that six-party talks may still be one of the options for, and not to mention that six-party talks is virtually the only international mechanisms that U.S. and China play in co-leadership role. So that's the case, and also to deal with Russia and Japan. That's one of the good vehicles for. But again, of course, that's still full of uncertainty. The last policy area we may have to pay attention is domestic debate in China. We understand that next month, most likely there will be a new leadership with 18th Party Congress. Chinese leaders have been preoccupied by domestic issues, so many other issues on hold. But North Korea issue is always a source of debate. One particular argument from different groups within China is that North Korea might be a liability for China's international image, which, of course, it's against prevailed belief within China that is North Korea is served actually is a good buffer, and China should stick to its traditional ally or alliance position with North Korea. So what I'm saying here is North Korea issue itself might be a policy debate and may affect future. I'm not saying that the liability argument now is in the upper hand. It's still in a minority group, but you can hear and you can see those group of arguments. So those are the four. I just give you 4 examples of concrete policy potential. Now let me turn to the 2 presenters for questions. Both did excellent job. I would push Scott a little bit. As we just mentioned, the U.S. presidential election is coming, and tonight Obama will compete. During the early chat, you correctly point out that there are not much difference between Romney and Obama. It's not really a policy debate issue, not like China issue this time. However, I would like to push you a bit more that is, given the impact of U.S. policy, is always served as a central concern of Pyongyang. Axis of evil, of course, is already gone, that kind of argument. But how much that group of influence still there, and whether we may see a different policy preference, and particularly if there are no six-party talks, what are other alternatives from White House, whoever will be the next president? So that is basically, I try to bring you, push you from the Korean Peninsula and back to here, Washington. For Dr. Lee, my question, you presented a very interesting picture about pluralistic elite structure, which is naturally very interesting. But whether this new leadership, you mentioned, designed by Kim Jong-il, created more stability of the regime, or rather is a more competitive nature to make the regime not so stable. So that's my first question. My next question to you is, you didn't really talk a lot about external policy or foreign policy. You talk much about domestic issues. But externally, what would be the likelihood? You basically talk about there are basically two groups. The security group may would like to, the new security group, bring more investment. So it's kind of reform-oriented. The military group you mentioned, rather to keep tension, military first, some good policy. So my question is, which would be an upper hand to your prediction, and for the, if not the years to come, for the months, what would so I would like again push you a little bit more to see your analysis. In the end, I would really think both presenters give a excellent and presentation, and we all looking forward to hearing more from them. Thank you very much.
Okay, before two presenters are going to answer Professor Chow's question, let me ask one very simple question. This year in April, North Korea launched, they call it satellite, but like other people just call it, especially in Japan, say this is missile. After that, the United Nations adopted presidential statement to accuse North Korea's missile launch. Then many experts assume that North Korea is going to make a third nuclear test, including Japan, the United States, and South Korea as well. But so far, North Korea has not conducted a third nuclear test. So if you have any ideas why North Korea has not conducted the third nuclear test, because back in the year 2009, exactly the similar thing happened. And then many experts, again, the United States, South Korea, and Japan, they attributed North Korea's aggressive polling behavior to domestic politics in North Korea. So if you see any changes or similarities, you should explain about it. So after answering this question, probably we are going to accept your questions as well. Could you
Okay. Since the mic's not working, I think I'm just going to stay here, but perhaps I'll stand up so I can project a little bit. I want to thank Professor Zhao for his comments. I do want to make one comment on his comments and then try to answer the question. And the comment that I want to make is that Professor Zhao mentioned six-party talks, but that is a venue that has not been very active for the past 4 years. And so, the reason is that the agenda for the six-party talks was denuclearization. North Korea has been unwilling to commit to talking about denuclearization for the past 4 years. And so all I want to do is to say that actually I think the North Koreans would prefer to frame the agenda for dialogue not around denuclearization, but actually around peace. And so I think that one of the interesting questions going forward is whether we might see, at least theoretically, a four-party venue for talking about from armistice to peace, at least as a competing idea for dialogue. But I think the North Koreans might be moving in the direction of pushing.
Could you elaborate? Four-party.
Well, if you go back and look at the original, conclusion of the armistice, there are actually three parties who were signatories, because the South Korean government under Lee Sung-man decided not to sign. But you had the Chinese People's Volunteers, you had the DPRK, you had the UN Command. And so, back in the late 90s, we had, I think, an earlier version of this looking at the possibility of a four-party format. I think that the North Koreans, as they focus on trying to make peace the centerpiece for discussion, might be advocating or more comfortable with a four-party format. Frankly, all of these issues are going to be difficult to discuss in multilateral formats from a U.S. perspective unless North Korea commits to talk about denuclearization. And I've suggested that right now the regime actually appears to be challenging that as a premise underlying negotiation. The question that I was asked by Professor Zhao was about how the elections might have an impact on U.S. policy. And I would say that over the course of the last 4 years with the, as the Obama administration came in, one of the, I think, defining perceptions of the security community in Washington that I think has influenced U.S. policy is that actually the North Korean issue seems more and more difficult to solve. And in order to have political will from the top, any president needs to think there's going to be a payoff. But as the North Korean issue has looked more and more difficult, I think that that has helped to explain why, at least on the U.S. side, there's been less enthusiasm for engaging in any kind of political negotiation process, because negotiation in the U.S. experience hasn't necessarily brought many positive results when dealing with North Korea. There's a deterioration of trust or confidence in that process. And so it makes it very difficult to imagine that the U.S. is going to take the lead. So what I'm watching is actually the South Korean position under a new president early next year, which is probably going to move more toward engagement. And for instance, the Obama administration has indicated that it wants to work closely with allies. If the South Korean government takes the lead to engage in inter-Korean relations, what will that mean for the U.S.? And what will that mean for the U.S. relationships actually both with South Korea and Japan? Because over the course of the past 4 years, we've had the luxury of a situation where South Korea, Japan, and the United States have all defined the primary issue that we have to deal with North Korea as denuclearization. But if a South Korean president shifts toward reconciliation as a theme of its policy, then that could create some interesting coordination challenges for the U.S., South Korea, and Japan as we manage that process. I'll just say one word about why no nuclear test, and the main word I want to say about that is that's the reason why I don't make predictions about what North Korea is going to do. I do think that there is a rationale for why North Korea would not want to do anything provocative now during a campaign season. You mentioned the earlier 2009 pattern, but one other aspect of a pattern that we've seen in the past was actually 2006, and the way that North Korea's first nuclear test actually, from North Korea's perspective, created an opportunity for negotiation. The end of administrations is not necessarily the best time to do that if you're looking for a follow-on effect. So, of course, since they haven't tested in the last 3 months, as analysts look forward, more and more will say, well, maybe they'll do it in, like the first 3 months of next year or something like that. I'm not going to make a prediction for obvious reasons, but I do think that we may see some speculation and a rationale for that speculation that moves toward the possibility that North Korea could take the opportunity to frame their issue for 2 new administrations in Washington and Seoul. And in that case, it would be very similar to what they did 20 years ago in 1993, when, again, we had 2 new administrations in Washington and Seoul, and North Korea announced its withdrawal from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And that was really the beginning of the first North Korean nuclear crisis. So that would be my attempt to address that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ali.
I also stand up. As this prosecution is like to say, if the new resume is appearing, as Simon says, naturally, as new article group is followed, it's natural. However, in case of the Kim Jong-un, he had no opportunity to make his own organization and his own elite group, his own regulation. He didn't have no opportunity. Therefore, what is the most problem is the one thing. Kim Jong don't know about that because he just working. Everyone is follow him. His misunderstanding is his position. His thinking is he is really is like his father. As he just said and everything is changing. He just orders everything is possible. However, he didn't conflicted, not yet. As anything from especially from the elite group. It just is nowadays he shows so many fantastic gestures. He introduced his wife, and he is working as so many kind of the children's park, and he orders something, anything. But he is misunderstanding of his position because every reporting system is concentrates on the Johnson Tech. He don't know about what happened in North Korea is nearby. He just as various selecting data. He takes the selecting data, and then is North Korea is Kim Jong Un is will be is very unstable as to be harmony with that his elite groups, and then this is a problem for Kim Jong Un. And then the second question, and the question is very similar. So I can firstly he says about why North Korea didn't third nuclear test, because from my presentation I mentioned about the North Korea's inner political situation is very competing, and then is from the January 2008 as the nomination of the Kim Jong Un is as a successor. There is And competing is very regularly repeated, provocation and conversation. And then is the North Korea's military group is rising up during the Songun as the military politics, military first policy, and from the 1998. And they have a very important position, and they take us the very important economic powers, and they can push up all kinds of the policy. And then, as from this after dying of the Kim Jong-il, as there is no background supporting the military first policy. This is, I think, is the last chance to 2.29 agreement is broken because of the Kim Jong-un needs some kind of the provision of the food, some kind of the supplies from the U.S. The nutritional supplies, but North Korea's military is intervening of the blocking of the legacy of the Kim Jong-il, the military first policy. They insisted on the launching of the southern long-range rocket, and then it's North Korea's resident security is thinking there was necessary to breaking of the control over the military powers. And then there's the change everything. As the director of the political bureau, general political bureau is very important to control over the military. As this Cha Ryong-hee is come from civilian. It's the first time to civilian is to be director of the general political bureau. And he is a very close collaborator of the Jang Sung-taek. Is the control over the military. And then, after 3 months, as Lee Yong-ho was purged. This is from this is processing is very important. I think it's North Korea's why did not carry out of the third nuclear test because of the change everything. As the resident security group is this right of the object as yes this is contradictive of each other, and then okay, so therefore North Korea's policy will be I'm assured that I don't know but definitely is that North Korea will be very for the time being. It's not continuous, but for the time being, as they need some kind of the food or investment here, and some kind of they need some resident stability. Therefore, there is make us Jang Sung-taek policy will be continued for the time being. It's very important. I don't know it's 1 year or 2 years, I don't know, but now it's very important moment. Thank you.
Okay, Professor Cho, any follow-up comment or question? So we have about 20 more minutes. Time is for you. Any question or comment from towards? Okay.
Dave.
Could you just identify yourself?
Yeah, Dave Fitzgerald, private consultant. I was wondering if you could comment on how the events of the last 3-4 months or so in terms of territorial issues in and around Northeast Asia impact on this whole question of how to deal with the emerging North Korean regime and whether you can achieve or maintain a sense of coordination amongst the various groups, actors, in the six-party process or outside of it, in order to deal with North Korea, or whether North Korea can simply be using this to.
So your question goes to
Well, Scott or
You're talking about
or anybody else on the panel wants to talk about it.
と。
I mean, that's,
If you have an answer, that's even better.
yeah, it's a very complicated issue. I mean, right now, not much has been going on the six-party front. In the past, we have seen periods when there were issues that have divided members of the six-party talks, in particular Japan and South Korea, for instance, in the early 2000s, where the six-party process and dealing with North Korea actually remained to a certain extent kind of separated from some of the political fallout in relations from those issues from that time. At this stage, because there's not that much going on, it's hard for me to say at this point. I mean, as far as I would have expected that there might have been some, there probably was some contact between the six-party point people in Japan and South Korea, respectively, in advance of Japan's talks with North Korea. But I do think that it's interesting that that there wasn't a visit this time between, you know, the South Korean point person and the Japanese point person. Probably they might have decided that they could just have a phone call or something like that, is my guess. But I mean, you know, longer term, from a broader perspective, I think, especially if we look at the six-party process from the past, you know, I think the U.S. has always found it easier to, you know, work on these North Korea-related issues in a circumstance where the U.S., Japan, and South Korea were all on the same page, and where the political environment was positive. It provides other parties opportunities to exploit, you know, those differences as pretext for not moving forward when things are happening. Right now, we're kind of in a hiatus. You know, there is interesting, I think, diplomatic action going on between North Korea and China that I kind of, you know, glossed over. You know, last month, Jong Un-tek's visit to Beijing, and of course, the visit by the party head, Wang Jia, last August, or in July, to Pyongyang, where he actually met with Kim Jong Un, is very significant because it was the first foreign diplomatic interaction that Kim Jong Un had. It's very similar to what happened in February of 2009 when the same person, Wang Jia, met with Kim Jong-il as the first foreign visitor to meet Kim Jong-il after his stroke. And so, I mean, that might be the main area where there is activity, at least in the coming near term. It seems like Japan DPRK talks are still trying to gain some kind of foothold. But, you know, it's interesting that the North Koreans are trying to reach out in various ways, you know, but we don't know whether consolidation is complete. And we certainly don't have a stable or a clear leadership position in advance of elections. So, you know, a lot of this is really setting the table for early 2013.
Just a quick follow-up. The question is about territory disputes in recent months, how that would be related to North Korea. I have 2 points. One, so far those territory disputes is a bit away from North Korea issue. Like Sankaku-doi is China-Japan, and Dudo Takeshima is South Korea, Japan, and also the Northern Territory issue is Russia, Japan. So basically it seems like all around Japan. It's not necessarily North Korea. Having said that, I would say that all those disputes may push major powers to work together, but facilitate. Let me give you one example. Noda-san, in his visit to Washington earlier springtime, talked with Obama and made a proposal that to have a institutionalized U.S., Japan, China trilateral consultation. That's my understanding. But so far, China has not yet made a response with this suggestion. But my understanding is that Koreans were not happy with this proposal, saying that this would leave Korea Peninsula issue be solved by three major powers, that is U.S., China, Japan. So that may have some kind of implication if for the territory dispute to avoid military confrontation among major powers such as China, Japan, and U.S. may have a more function there, then inevitably Korea issue will be part of the discussion on the agenda. But so far, we haven't seen that materialize. So that's just my comment.
Okay, thank you very much, Uncle. It's very interesting. I think you'd like to respond. Otherwise, maybe
Yes, I think.
okay. So please.
Yes, I'm Akira Chiba from the Japanese Embassy, and I have a question for Mr. Snyder concerning the tools you employ when you assess the domestic situation in North Korea. And we have heard from Dr. Lee, his tool is very impressive. Now, since the situation in North Korea is so opaque, we need to resort to some sort of model, put all the pieces together. Unless you really don't know what's going to happen. So you need to resort to some kind of conventional wisdom. And I'm asking this because I'm a China hand at the foreign ministry, and China hands tend to look at the situation in China, which is also very non-transparent, through the mirrors of Chinese history, for three reasons: because it's the same old dictatorship out there, it's the same people dealing with the situation. Number three, because the Chinese regard history very highly, so that it's very likely that the Chinese actors themselves, guys themselves, as historical figures, and do accordingly, learning from their own history. So when you look at the situation in North Korea, does court politics and ancient Seoul give you any insight, or do you resort to other models?
Yeah. Well, if I say that court politics in ancient Seoul is influencing the way I look at North Korea, it probably just suggests I've been watching too many South Korean historical dramas on TV. I mean, I do think that that is interesting as a way of thinking about what might be happening in North Korea right now, because I think what is striking about both Dr. Lee's presentation and my own is that we basically both abandoned an institutional structure approach to looking at North Korea. Even though we know that there's the party, the military, and the cabinet as three major institutions. I think the reason why we did that is that sitting on top of those institutions is a superstructure of elites that are vying for control over institutions. And to that extent, in an odd sort of way, maybe thinking about it as a byproduct of court politics is, potentially interesting. The other, the problem is it's also misleading. I mean, we really don't know. There's a very active debate, even I think in a way reinforced by Professor Lee's presentation, over, is this a one-man model, a one-man rule model, or a collective model? If you put that into a South Korean, historical political context, it becomes very complicated, because historically you had weak kings in Korea, surrounded by powerful advisors who manipulated the situation. In North Korea, for the first two generations, we saw strong leaders and very little evidence of manipulation. They were in control. And I think that the structure, in theory, is still designed to have one key decision maker at the top. But I think we really have a hard time believing that that's what's happening given the fact that we're talking about a 28-year-old man, young man, surrounded by 60-year-old generals who, you know, admittedly happen to bow very deeply when he's around.
It's very difficult to predict to analyze of the North Korea's political system because it's very close to societies. And it's very simple as have the interview about the North Korean official. It's impossible. And one fact is the divide is so many kinds of the interpretation. However, we have some, but we had some kind of the common is a point about the North Korea's. We came from the North Korea system. I introduced about the North Korea strong system. It's about the strong system is very unique in the North Korea because the transcentralism of the one man is everything, everyone. There's only one man is free, has have the just the freedom. The other person is the all of this I just say slave. And then how can this possible there in North Korea? This system is consolidated by Kim Jong-il because his succession system. This is the very North Korean leaders Kim Jong-il as he make his strong system is because of his powers. He's just his father is centralism 1%, and then everything is he take initiative of the North Korea. Therefore, this system will be has one unique one common point is that is only the only person Kim Jong-il can interpret of this system. Therefore, after dying Kim Jong-il, this system will be downsizing. I think it is collapsing more and more because of this. We can find out the North Korea's heritage structure as he did divided. He divided for his younger son as heritage structure, as I mentioned obviously. This is the starting point, and the heritage want to struggle for survival. This is the instinct of the human, and North Korea says will be happening, possible. Absence of the Kim Jong-il.
Okay, so go ahead.
I was thinking that for the new leader, since he spent over a third of his life in Europe, and I know people are paying a fortune in D.C. to debrief everybody who had contact with him in Europe, he's not exactly an unknown element. And yet there's been no characterization here except to say he's a young guy. And secondly, the idea that just because he's 28 years old or whatever, that he basically has to be under some kind of tutelage. There are plenty of examples in history of people of that age who were already fully in charge, and some, very famous leaders. So I was thinking I would like to have some comments from the panel about the youth element, because, for example, if you look at this groundswell in China of anti-Japanese sentiment among Chinese youth and university students, which seems to be pretty much spontaneously arising and not manipulated by the government, and similarly in South Korea, tremendous anti-Japanese and anti-American sentiment, and also very heavily on the youth side. Now, if you have this youthful leader in North Korea, I mean, it doesn't take too much of a genius analyst to figure that he's going to try and tap into that. Could make some comments on this.
Okay, there are two more hands, so maybe you could, yes, please identify yourself and ask some questions. So maybe you two or everybody here should answer.
Conrad Marshal from Polish Embassy. I have a short question to Professor Zhao. You mentioned in your presentation that in China, as North Korea policy goes, there are two groups: majority group in the leadership for maintaining the alliance, traditional alliance with North Korea, and minority group. And my question is, what do you think is this minority? Anybody in the current Politburo, among the future leaders of China, Xi Jinping, He Keqiang, I guess they are in the majority group. So maybe other institutions that is in this minority that could in the future change this policy. How influential are they? Any names or maybe other institutions? Only this would elaborate a bit. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Kikuchi and I'm a senior advisor at Washington Research and Analysis. I want to follow up on his point. About perhaps 10 or 15 years ago, there was a group of North Koreans. Actually, there was a flight from Indonesia to Narita, and they arrested these people because they found out the Indonesian passport was fake, and it turned out to be one of the Kim families. Possibly it was Kim Jong Un, who loved to go to Tokyo Disneyland, and I'm sure he did that, and his group did that a number of times, but this particular time he was detained at Narita and then sent home, which was a stupid thing for the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs to do. They should have welcomed him and sent him, give him free pass to Tokyo Disneyland. But anyway, aside from that, meaning this person or whoever, the brother of Kim, they know Japan well. They know the outside world very well. And I'd like to ask Professor Nakato, in this connection, none of you mentioned about the Chosun Soren. Roughly 200,000 Japanese people, people living in Japan of Korean descent, third, now even fourth generation. They do not acquire Japanese citizenship, but remain, quote, North Korean citizens. There are another 300 who claim to be South Korean citizens. But these 200,000 people in Japan, I think are free to go to North Korea if they wish to. I have friends in Osaka who are Japanese who trade with North Korea via Dalian in China. Meaning, there are a lot of information. I'm surprised that we pretend like we know so little about North Korea and vice versa. And especially because the head of Chosun Soren, I'm told, is an important person in the government of North Korea. So I wonder if you can comment on that.
Well, with regard to Kim Jong-un's youth, one thing I would say is that actually he spent only less than 2 years in Switzerland, and it seems like he was relatively isolated even from his classmates. And so it's hard to oversell what exactly he might have taken back from that experience. I do find it interesting that in the last few months, the Youth League has been a major focus of activity and public events as a way of building support inside North Korea. From an analytical perspective, I think the most difficult thing for me to try to grapple with is to, kind of imagine putting myself in Kim Jong-un's shoes as someone who has a very limited historical experience. And so I think that it makes it much more difficult for us to understand how he himself might react as a leader to particular situations, because a lot of our historical reference for how North Korea has responded to situations in the past may not be as valid today as they have been in cases where the leader was much older.
Yeah, the question about Europe and also youth. My understanding is that Europe was part of early activities. For example, the Cato deal. At that time, I guess Europe was part of the related party, but then withdraw from the case. My understanding is because of financial consideration, would not want to pay the bill, then that was not much relevant to. Nevertheless, of course, Europe has been very concern. That's your second question about youth, young people. That's again is an excellent case between Europe and Asia. Asia has a tradition of respect elder, so that kind of seniority tradition does play a role. I would think a 28-year-old, even though how capable he may be, but still would pay much more attention in an Asian, East Asia environment to the Arabic people's advice compared to Europe, if I can say that. The question from Poland embassy about the minority versus majority. Let me give you one example. A few years back, there is an outspoken journal in China named 战略与管理, Strategy and Management. And that particular journal, known as outspoken on a different opinion. For example, new thinking with Japan policy. They have a debate. But then when that same journal published an article with so-called new thinking of North Korea policy, then the journal itself was shut down. That gives you an idea that's how much sensitive of a Korea policy compared to Japan policy, for example. But that also gives you an idea that even in China with policy debate, you can see those minority opinion. I would say that over the time, the traditional tie between North Korea and China, although remained, but nevertheless weakened over the years. One of the best examples is past if you look at after the nuclear and other issues, China endorsed at least several UN resolutions to have economic sanctions over North Korea, which is unprecedented. It would never happen before, indicating a couple of changes in terms of Politburo or leaders. That is, China indeed need to demonstrate its responsibility in international arena, but also reflect China and North Korea may not as solid in terms of relationship as outsiders may look at. In many cases, North Korea would not want to listen to China, and North Korea is known as playing cards. Early part playing Moscow cards against Beijing, and nowadays playing Washington cards with Beijing cards. There are a lot of games China began to learn the lessons. Having said that, still majority opinion, my understanding is that China should stick to this particular relationship because that's conducive to China's national interests.
Yes, the experience of the outside world is, I think it's maybe affected North Korean leaders' philosophy or behaviors. Because especially Kim Jong-il's son, there are three sons, Kim Jong-nam and Kim Jong-chul and Kim Jong-un, and his younger daughters. The poor person has common point is poor person is everyone has experienced outside the world, and that is especially Kim Jong-nam is insistent as his father is the only way to survive of the North Korea open the gate right to China. He insisted. He is rejected from his father, and that is his Kim Jong-un as why he visited the children park, because he saw as in his childhood Disneyland. he want to make his children popular and as a right of the decision rate. But it's no, I don't know if he can do it. But as Kim Jong-un says about the to match of the height of the eye, his eye as to the world, he emphasized on his people. This means he look at the outside of the world. I think it's a very positive symptoms and positive factors to North Korea.
Okay, so before closing this session, I'm not really sure if I understand your question.
What's the role of Chosen Soren in all of this?
The role of the Chosen Soren?
I mean, we have 200,000 people living in Japan claiming to be North Korean, and we say we don't know anything about North Korea. How can that be?
Well, of course, they get lots of information because, as you mentioned, they visit North Korea and they often go back and forth. And one of the leader of the Chosen Soren is in the high position, as you talked about that. So, but it does not necessarily mean that they bring in the so-called correct information to Japan. Yes, I have some contact with them,
sure.
And they just told me that they go as if North Korea is going very well. And economic conditions in Pyongyang, for example. If you visit Pyongyang, then that's really wonderful. Everybody using cell phone, and also like people using like how do you call it, iPad or whatever. I don't even know how to use it, but they do it. So if you're looking at only that aspect, probably you could say yes, North Korean economic situation is really going up. But for example, if you go to the countryside, then the situation is totally different. So it's very difficult to grasp the whole situation across. It's really good. And also, as Dr. Lee mentioned, for example, if I visited North Korea, I do have a chance to interview with North Korean government officials, such as Ambassador to USJI normalization talk, Song Il-ho, or Pam Pona. He was interpreter for Kim Jong-il and Prime Minister Koizumi, and then they said always North Korea is doing fine. And also what Japan is doing is really wrong. And also what Japan can do is just following the United States. Japan has no independent voice. Whenever I go there, I get told the same thing. And if I bring up the question of abduction issues, they always bring up 80 million, 8 million, more than 8 million people just there by period Japan. I'm not really sure the number is correct, but they keep saying that. So we have some information, but we are not sure it's really good. We need to explore our scrutinize these information. So it's not as simple as you know. And the time is almost up, and also probably US-Japan Institute. I should have talked about maybe more on the role of Japan, but unfortunately, as far as the Korean Peninsula question is concerned, the role of Japan is limited because nuclear issues and missile issues are mainly the question of the United States and North Korea, and in many cases, the Korean issues pretty much influenced by inter-Korea relations, domestic politics in the United States, and the US-China strategic constellation. So, of course, Japan has its own agenda, such as abduction issues. So right now, the working level condition dialogue is going on, but we don't know what's going to happen. Anyway, thank you very much for your participation. Now I'd like to close this session. Thanks a lot.